Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Amen. Hopefully, you had a wonderful lunch break, and amen. And I hope that you would join me in fighting. All right. And this is what I have to fight. After a meal like that, I'm prone to go to sleep. But I'm going to do like my granddaughter. I'm going to fight sleep. But on a serious note, it won't be hard to fight because we've got presentations this afternoon that will keep us alert and attentive. And so let me just thank you for coming back, and those of you who are joining us virtually. We've gotten off track in terms of time, but we are getting back on track, and so we just thank you for your being present with us. Our next presenter was scheduled to be with us this morning, but things do happen, and so he was not here at that time, but we certainly don't want to miss the opportunity to hear from him. So he's going to come and give us a brief version, an abridged version of his presentation. And he is a friend of ours. Dr. Mike and I got to meet him virtually a few months ago, and we've been on some virtual meetings and doing some things together. And it was good today to meet him in person. But he is David Morgan, comes to us from the Atlanta area. And as a part of his background, he is the first African-American male to be elected to the Cobb County School Board in 2008, where he served for 12 years and made some significant change during those 12 years. He currently works for Americans for Prosperity as a lobbyist and grassroots engagement director. And that's how Dr. Mike and I got to meet him in that particular work. And he finds the time to also teach U.S. history in the Atlanta public schools. And today he is here to share with us again an abridged version of his presentation. You'll be hearing from him again in another setting so we can get it all. But today he's going to briefly introduce us to something that he is very passionate about, that we have joined him in the effort, and that is criminal justice reform. And so help me in welcoming Brother David Morgan.
I'll say good afternoon again. Good afternoon. Yes, I know I better have a lot of energy up here and brief. Energy and brief. But in all seriousness, thank you. I feed off energy. But in all seriousness, I would be remiss, and I can already see my mom, even though she's in Atlanta, staring a hole through me if I do not express genuine gratitude and thanks to God for my health, life, and strength. That's genuine. That's not just some perfunctory statement. That's genuine. But I'd be just as remiss if I did not express that same level of genuine gratitude for Dr. Simmons, Dr. Mack, and Dr. Smith. I came to them about this issue of criminal justice reform, and God would have it be that we've connected and we have a plan that we are going to execute around this issue of criminal justice reform in our state. Now, before I get into this, because as Dr. Simmons said, I'm a teacher. Like, I teach 11th grade, like, right now. Like, not 2 years ago, like, right now. So my presentation is going to be brief, but I'm going to do it like if I was standing in front of my kids, okay? So y'all get ready to participate. And don't be scared to be wrong, but I do need engagement and participation. Is that okay? Okay. But yes. Issue of criminal justice reform is one of the issues that we work on with Americans for Prosperity, Georgia. We also work on the issue of poverty. We also work on the issue of education. But today, in these brief moments, we're going to talk about the issue of criminal justice reform. What do I want you to walk away with? Two things. The first thing, I want you to walk away knowing where we currently stand in the state. As a state, where do we stand? The second thing, and this might be a little tougher, but I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. I would like to stay in contact with me, not some telemarketer, me. Because I know when it comes to issues that are important in our communities, it takes a persistence. And persistence comes from people. And if you're not persistent, then you're not going to see the type of changes that we deserve in our communities. Will you agree with that? Today marks the 1 year anniversary. Who could tell me what the 1 year anniversary of today is? Man, I was hoping y'all didn't know. I was hoping I was going to. George Floyd. Yes. Of him being murdered in the streets of Minnesota. So here we go. You guys have the handout, correct? Here we go. We're going to go through these. Don't forget, I'm teaching. Number 1. Raise your hand if you think you know the answer. The Georgia legislature recently passed a bill that limits no-knock warrants in the state. Somebody raise their hand, tell me if you think you know the answer. Somebody? True? I need y'all to go ahead and circle false. Right now in the state of Georgia, they can still kick your door in and just go to shoot. Right now in this state. Number 2, the state mandates that any offender leaving a correctional facility must have some form of identification. Social security card, birth certificate, or personal ID prior to release. That's false. We have a lot of people that come out into our offenders that come out in the community with no identification. You don't realize how important identification is until you don't have one. Then you realize you can't do anything. Georgia does not require that. Number 3, it is legal for the police to keep large sums of cash or property suspected. So the police can suspect of some crime or being obtained through criminal means. What do I mean by that? Police pull you over. This actually happened. 2 people were traveling from Georgia to another state with $27,000 cash to buy a used car. They wanted to pay for the whole car. Right there. Police pulled them over. They thought it was for drugs. Is it legal in the state of Georgia, right as I speak to you, for the police, law enforcement, to take that money from you? It's true. Does the police have to give it back to you? No. No. And in the state of Georgia right now, you have to pay 10% of whatever they got off of you just to go in there and try to fight to get your money back. So if it's $27,000, you got to go pay $2,700 to say, hey, that wasn't drug money. It's right now in the state. The state of Georgia has the highest amount of police decertifications. That means a police officer, he was a police officer, he's no longer he or she, on an annual basis than any other state in the country. True or false? True. More police officers are decertified in Georgia than any other state in the country. And finally, if a police officer, I'm going to paraphrase number 5. If a police officer is being investigated for misconduct, he or she can retire or resign and not have that investigation done to him or her. True or false? True. Can I add a little bit more to that? They can retire and resign, and then they can just go to another without any of that showing up on their record. Now let's get into the last few moments that I have. Please turn to page 2. Do I sound like a teacher up here, y'all? Okay. In the state of Kentucky, they had a lot of police reform this past legislative session. Can anyone guess why Kentucky has so much police reform this legislative session? Breonna Taylor, Dr. Matt. Now, what's impressive, I got to give credit where credit is due. You know, Kentucky is predominantly Republican and white men. So I got to give credit where credit is due. They did some good stuff. So what you're going to see in the next few things, and the reason I'm showing you these issues, these are issues that we are going to be addressing in Georgia in 2022 in the legislative session. But see, we can't do it in an insular way. It takes people to make a demand for it. First thing is reentry. If you look at Kentucky House Bill 497, I'm not going to get too deep into it. I'll just paraphrase it. You can read it at your leisure. Basically, they're incentivizing employers with liability protections if they hire an offender coming out of correctional facilities, which is a good thing. You're incentivizing an establishment saying, hey, we're going to give you another chance. We're going to do that for you to get another chance. Not only that, they're also making sure they're mandating that they come out of corrections with personal identification, social security card, personal ID. If they've gotten any training there, a resume, any certifications that they might have learned while they were incarcerated. That's not optional in Kentucky anymore. That is mandatory. We are working for that we will be working for that same re-entry in Georgia. That's one thing that we want you to know. Second thing I want you to know is this. I clearly told you that in Georgia right now, any of you happen to remember Katherine Johnston? It's about 10, 15 years ago, elderly lady in Atlanta. They kicked the door in, killed her. Wrong door. Then they tried to lie. Man, the police officer shot himself in the leg, trying to act like, yes. Well, right now in the state of Georgia, no-knock warrants are still permissible. Well, in Kentucky, Senate Bill 4, if you want to look this up in your leisure, they've changed the law. They didn't ban them, they limited no-knock warrants. Now, you can make good arguments for limits or no-knock. That's not for me to try to convince you. But they did limit them. And a couple quick things I want to point out to you. They have to have it on body cameras. So we're not getting into this he said, she said. And you have to have it on the entire time. Okay, oh, it went off. I don't know what happened. Other thing that I want you to know is that the legislation calls for the warrant to be issued with an approval from a supervising officer in consultation with the district attorney and county attorney. And it limits the hours in which the warrant can be used. We're looking to limit no-knock warrants in Georgia. The reality is this. You're not going to ban them in Georgia. You still have a Republican governor and a predominantly Republican House and Senate. What's feasible is limiting them. That is what we're going to be working with. Third quick thing I want to tell you about is police misconduct. You look on page 3. It says Georgia currently has the highest number of police decertifications. We went over that in the state, in the country. Now you can look at intervention, automatic decertification. So what we're in the process of doing now, I'm doing the research on what causes officers to be decertified in Georgia and expanding that list. As you can see in Kentucky, they've added dishonesty, deceit, physical violence, crimes against a minor or a household member, fraud, misrepresentation. Now what's scary is before this year, an officer can do all that stuff and not get fired. Household member means if you were a male officer and you beat your wife, you still could be a police officer. So we're going to look to expand that. But this is the biggest part of what we're looking for in Georgia under police misconduct. Prevent an officer from skirting decertification by resigning or retiring before an internal investigation is complete. If you have done something, an internal investigation is investigating you. 1, we want to take away that loophole of you retiring and resigning. And 2, we want to take away you going to another jurisdiction and that not following you. The final thing that I want to say to you before I take my seat. Does anyone in here have any idea what civil asset forfeiture is? Civil asset forfeiture is what I described about law enforcement being able to take your property or your cash for reasonable suspicion. If you look on the last page, well, page 4, it says Georgia currently has an F. I'm going to quickly read each one of these and then I will sit down. It says, has the state abolished civil asset forfeiture in Georgia? No. Is criminal conviction required for most or all forfeiture cases? No. That means that they could literally, if they think that your house is a drug house, they can literally take your house. That's not the worst part of it. As you can see, it says you don't even have to be convicted. So if you, let's say you're found innocent, guess what you still don't have? The house. That's right now in the state. That's why it's urgent about us being involved. What's the burden of proof in Georgia? Preponderance of evidence. You know what a preponderance, that's a fancy way of just saying, I think something happening going on in there. I saw some people walking in and out last night. Their pants were sagging, they had on a hood. What percentage of the fund goes to law enforcement? 100%. Let me tell you the other side of the story about why we currently don't have a better law. Especially in rural, predominantly white, Republican parts of Georgia. They say, well, we fund a lot of our police department through civil asset forfeiture. That's how we fund a lot of what we do. So they say to the taxpayers, listen, now we stop getting these tens of thousands or hundreds of dollars off these people that we think might have done something, then you're going to be the person that's, your tax is going to go up. That's why we still have civil asset forfeiture in Georgia. Final thing I want to say is this. Is there a cost of bond requirement for challenging a seizure? No. So in Georgia, we do have that part right. The final thing I will ask you is if you look at page 5 at the bottom, it has information card. Let me tell you why I genuinely and humbly ask for your information. Because we have to know where your representatives stand on these issues. We can't hold people accountable, you all, if we don't even know who's representing us in the first place. If I were to ask you, who's your state representative and your state senator, some of you here probably don't know. You probably start telling me people at the federal level. Typically when I ask people that, they start telling me when he was living, John Lewis, and no, on the state level, because these are where these laws are made. So if you're so kind as to fill that out, it'll only go to me. I'm going to contact you. Just me, not the organization, because I want to build a relationship with you as we start to try to build a groundswell of support around the issue of criminal justice reform. I thank you so much for indulging me for these few minutes, and I look forward to reconnecting with everyone. Thank you.
Let me thank Brother David for his presentation, and I'm coming to the camera in just a minute. I tell you what, I'll come on up now so I won't forget we're live. Let me thank Brother David for his presentation, and let me just be very, very clear. This was not a one and done. This was not a presentation for information, but there is an ongoing partnership between this convention and his organization. And Pastor President Mack and I have been involved in the initial planning, and we're planning and setting in place how we will move forward together, plan of operation, and then other churches and members of this convention will be involved as well. And so you'll have a chance to participate, because these issues impact all of us. All of us. All of us got somebody that we know, kin to us, already in jail or on paper. And then all of us stand in danger of somebody showing up one day to suspect us. We were sharing Sunday how the Lord worked things out, because I was walking, and my wife and a neighbor was standing on the street where we've lived for more than 30 years, and the neighbor has lived more than 30 years, and I went walking, and they were there talking. Well, when I get back, my wife tell me the police has come by. Got her name, her birthday, her number, and question her because somebody in the neighborhood called the police about these two women, 60 plus years old, just standing out talking. And it was, some of my light-skinned brothers and sisters that called the police. And had it been a different kind of situation, it could have been a whole lot different. But it just so happened the right officer showed up and it worked out. But it could have gone the other way. And so any of us, none of us are above an encounter with the police, and it just goes crazy. And so we need some new laws, and we are fortunate to be able to have a say-so in how that works. Thank you, Brother David, and we look forward to working with you. And one other thing, the lunch you enjoyed today, David paid for it. So we want to thank you for sponsoring lunch for us today. And we're going to move on now, and it is time now for the presentation of presentations. Yeah, we're going to have a presentation on the filling of the Holy Spirit. And I got to tell you, when we were planning the one-day conference and looking at this issue and who was the best speaker, and I said, Dr. Mack, it's not but one person I know that can do that. He said, who is it? I said, President Edwin Mack. What? He said, well, you can get somebody else. I know we can get somebody else, but there's nobody better than you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we are blessed to have our own President Mack to come and lead us in this workshop. And those of you who are in the virtual world, go ahead and type into that little chat line, thank God for President Mack. And let's put our hands together and thank God for President Mack.